Senator Berg,
Present in the room.
Senator Hornbeck,
That's okay.
Senator Embry, Senator Smith, Senator Storm, Senator Turner, Senator Wheeler,
Present in the district.
Senator Wilson, Senator Wise, Senator Yates,
Present from district.
Representative Bojanowski, Representative Branscombe,
Present in the room.
Representative Bratcher,
Here in the room.
Representative Bridges, Representative Carney, Representative Dixon,
Here in the room.
Representative Fleming,
Present in the room.
Representative Goforth,
Present in the district.
Representative Hale,
Present in the room.
Representative Heverin,
Present in the room.
Representative Regina Huff, Representative Thomas Huff,
Present in the room.
Representative Lewis,
Present in the 90th district.
Representative Maddox, Representative McCool, Representative McPherson,
Present in the room.
Representative Miller,
Here in the room.
Representative Santoro, Representative Smith,
Present here.
Representative Stevenson, here. Representative Tackett Lafferty,
Present in the room.
Representative Thomas,
Present in the room.
Representative Westrom, Representative Wheatley,
Here in the room.
Co-Chair Upchurch,
Present in the room.
Chairman Higdon.
Present in the room.
Thank you. We do have a quorum, and we will proceed. Would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the June 1st, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you all very much. We have a very lengthy agenda today, some important issues. So we'll start off with Sarah Jackson with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And please come forward and if you all would introduce yourself for the record. And I will say that Sarah Jackson is working with the Real ID project and the implementation of the district driver's license offices across the state. Her and I have had a lot of conversations recently, and she's been very receptive and listened to all my concerns. And it's going to be a concern of each and every one of you in the room as we transition from the circuit court clerks to those regional offices. So Sarah is very good about answering your calls. If you have an issue, please give her a call because, like I said, we're trying to get through this transition as smoothly as we can. And like I said, they've been very open and really worked to try to take care of all the issues that have come up so far. So with that said, Sarah, please identify yourself and have your guests identify themselves, and please proceed.
I'm Sarah Jackson, and I'm the Real ID Project Manager for the Transportation Cabinet.
I'm Matthew Cole. I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Vehicle Regulation.
Hello, I'm Steve Coffey. I work with the Cabinet with the Office of Information Technology.
So I'm going to kick off, and I want to thank you very much for having us. Senator Higdon is correct. He and I have had many conversations. I think he kicked off my 4th of July weekend for me. So I thank him for that. But I'm open to any of your calls at any time because we do want to get this right. What I can't solve for you all is that we are moving from a county by county model to a regional model. But I can help you as I try to help circuit clerks daily transition their folks off licensing as they have known it for many, many years. Today, we're going to go over 3 areas, and our presentations will be very brief. I'm going to talk briefly about the establishment of transportation regional offices. Commissioner Cole will talk about the continued progress on the circuit clerk transitioning, and Steve Coffey is with us to demo. It will take a very short amount of time, and it would be as if you were sitting in your office study at home or your living room renewing your license online. It's a very new launch that we've had, and so far has proved very successful and is yet another option for Kentucky drivers. There is a fact sheet that each of you should have been given, and we're going to keep each month updating these fact sheets, but I particularly want to draw your attention to the top map on the fact sheet. As you can see, looking at it, we've established 18 regional offices across the Commonwealth, with a special note that one, which is located at Louisville's Bowman Field, is temporary because on that same site we will be moving into a much larger facility. So the 18th office is actually a permanent site. Now, you can quickly see from the map that there are holes to be filled. We are working diligently to fill those holes, and we are by no means finished. We have 2 more offices opening soon, one in Hopkinsville, one in Manchester. We're in various stages of development of a final wave of offices numbering about 10 to 11 more. We continue to forge ahead with the guidance of the Finance Cabinet's Division of Real Properties, and we will continue to share with you those locations once leases are signed. What goes into selecting a regional location? Many, many factors, some of which are population, geography, where it might be situated relative to other regional sites, existing regional sites, access from nearby counties, out-of-county workforce numbers, access to main roads, available space and readiness, timelines. When this project first started, before Commissioner Cole was in his position and before I joined the Transportation Cabinet, I believe the plan was for 15 regional offices. We have adjusted the net number up considerably, from 15 to nearly double that number, 30 or 31 probably. And I want to assure you that even when we think we are done, we will constantly monitor and evaluate if more are needed, budget permitting. But that said, I will remind you, and it's my task to remind you every time I'm here, we're moving to a regional issuance model. And that means we're no longer going to have county by county. It is a sea change for Kentuckians, but I do believe you will continue to see us offering more choices than the traditional walking into a licensing office for a renewal or a license. Those changes include longer licensing periods to 8 years. It includes appointment scheduling. It includes an online renewal. It includes a pop-up program that you all wisely added to House Bill 453, which involves taking mobile units to counties that don't have regional offices. So I do want you to know that it is a full complement of offerings and services, and not just we've got to stop thinking the traditional way of getting in a car, driving to the local circuit clerk, walking in the office, and having your license issued. There are going to be many more ways that you can achieve that same goal going forward. In standing up the regional offices, we're driven by an overriding focus, I think, on all Kentuckians and how to best provide access to all. So I'm going to now let Commissioner Cole update you. And again, if you'll turn to the fact sheet, he can update you on the transitioning of the circuit clerk duties.
Yes, very well done, Sarah. We are transitioning the clerks now at about a rate of 10 counties per month. Once we get to September, we will be through 60 counties. So that'll put us over halfway through the counties. Right now, we're currently at a third once we introduce these last 10 the third week of July. The good news is we've already surpassed and broke the milestone of issuing over half of the daily volume. So it just goes to show that we're taking the load on now. We're taking the heavier portion of it to help ease that transition at the circuit clerk levels. So we just got done speaking with them at their circuit clerk college last week, and everything is going very smoothly with them. They love that we've provided them a voice in this process, and we've listened to them by listening to their feedback, making sure that we're meeting all of their needs. A lot of their biggest concerns was everyone else is, do we have a part of the program that will equally represent everyone? And we think with the online that we're getting ready to display, and then with the mobile units that we're bringing to counties, there's literally something for everybody. So we're very pleased at the progress so far. The circuit clerks have been very pleased, and we're excited just to keep rolling out these new innovations as we go to make it easier for everybody to get a license when and where they want to do that. At this time, we'll go ahead and let Steve do his demonstration, and at that point, we'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Matt and Sarah. So, so what happens? Does he need to bring this up?
Are you on the Zoom part?
There and share.
Cancel there. There you go. And share your screen.
All right.
Select the one you want to share.
While you're getting
There we
that, okay.
There
you're
we
ready.
are.
Okay.
Cancel. Minimize. The little one. There you go.
All right.
There you go.
Now we're cooking. There's always a technology, little changes and things. You're at your desk. No, we want you to do it over here. It's like, okay. So it's always a little challenge at all these things. So, but we're up and going. So this is a page that that we got up. Once we got the duties of trying to do licenses, we've always tried to figure how do we do it better? How can transportation take it to that next level? How can we offer more services that are out there? The online version basically is a version that's 24/7. So,
Will you check and make sure you have your mic on? Pull it closer to you.
It's got a green light.
Okay.
Pull this over here. All right. So this is the version that that we have. We issued, of course, the Real ID, the new standard and the old standard from this this application. The front page, the launching page there from the transportation website tells you who is eligible. And in a nutshell, it's if your license, there's nothing on your license that changes. You're at your same address, your same name. You don't have to provide documentation of new address or the CDL or non-U.S. citizen information. Those are the folks that can use this site basically 24/7. So let's get right into the application. Okay, so like many of the applications that we have done before, we use the same kind of a format. So now we're going to enter the information in, and if I can enter it in right, we'll be going. Make sure I entered it in right. So 3 7s there, yep. 1 9, and do the last 4. Oops. This is test data. And verify the date of birth.
Just the date there. 19.
Yep. Okay. So enter the information and verify. We ask you to take your license out and verify it with the information. HO397719 and 8343. All right. So this is the same information that we would see on to the regional offices that asked you those medical questions. And at this point, it's sent off to the National Driver Register and to check if you're suspended in another state, it goes off to the Social Security Administration to check, make sure the information is solid and good, and to CIDLIS. And we'll come back, and then we'll get right into the remainder of the application. Brings back the address. You got to have a good address in order to bring back the information, to mail you the license. So on this one, we have a physical address that's on the license. The postal address is where you get your mail. So if these are right, then we're ready to click yes. If that information was to change, then we have to get the documentation in the office. And we got an organ donor question. This person was already an organ donor, so we bypassed the first question. Would you like to save lives? Yes. Gives us a drop box like what's in the offices there. The drop box goes to 2, 5, 10, and 25. So we're going to continue to the payment. And here's the information over there. We got the organ donation amount of $2. We're renewing a standard 4-year operator motorcycle. You're going to see the totals there and the service fee. The service fee is less than $1. It's I don't know what it is with this one. I can't see it. You see it there? 78 cents. Okay. All right. There it is. Perfect. All right. Perfect. So now this could be anybody paying this. Like Matt wanted to pay for it, it'd be fine with me. All right, verify the information. Review, make sure it's all right. Click pay now. Okay. Thank you for your payment. Confirmation number went through. Here's your receipt. We can email it, or you can print it out right there. If you want to email it to yourself, you can do it right here. We look at it, everything looks correct. We finish up. And here's where we thank you, and please print your receipt, keep it with your current license till the other one arrives in the mail. Like to register to vote, we go on to the website there. You can do that. Emergency contact information, you have an opportunity to do that now. We're done.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to clarify that this is that a real ID or a standard driver's license are eligible for renewals online this way.
Okay. One thing, we have some constituents that don't have access. We have a lot of folks that don't have access to internet or are not computer literate or just various reasons. Hopefully we can pick up some partners along the way, like libraries or somebody that will help these constituents when they want to get their license, that they could go and get some help. We have some questions.
Sure.
First one up is Senator Smith. Senator Smith, are you still on the? Okay, we'll move on to Senator Berg.
First of all, I wasn't aware I had a question, but I want to say thank you very much. And I do actually have a question. Can you use this online when you have students who are away, out of state for school, and they need to renew their Kentucky driver's license? They don't have to come home anymore to do that.
Well, that's correct, but it will only mail to the residential license or mailing license on file, so it wouldn't be forwarded. The family members would be responsible
Would have to
for
forward
that.
it.
Correct.
And then to echo what Senator Higdon had to say, do you all see a possibility for those people either who don't have internet access or who are uncomfortable and don't know how to use the internet, to be able to call in and have somebody actually, while they're on the phone, go online and do this for them?
We don't have that set up initially, but it's certainly something that we can look into. One thing that we want to stress is that this is just as easy as ordering something from Amazon. So friends, family
Can do it for you.
We're coordinating with local officials in the county to set up computers that they already have, because all you need is just typical internet access. There's no special requirements. And the thing that we want to remind them that Steve's showing is people can do it from their cell phones. So they don't have to have home internet. They don't have to have a computer. They don't have to have a tablet. So they can just use a friend or family member's thing. But we can certainly keep that in mind about, having maybe a hotline where people that struggle with technology, that may be something we could do.
If you are not successful, you get a "we're sorry" page, and you need to make sure the information is entered right. Almost all the time, the information is not entered correctly, name and date of birth. A little date of birth on the phone can be a little tricky, but there is a phone number and a help number there in which a lot of those folks, if they get them, they will help the person enter in the information correctly. So we have a mechanism there to try to help those people, and it's the same day kind of help.
Okay, we're going to have to move along.
Thank you.
Brandon, Senator Smith did text his question in, and he was concerned about, Sarah, and you can explain this, concerned about payment options, that they're very limited right now. And so would you please explain what's going on with that?
You mean in the regional offices?
Correct.
Yes, sir. We are set up currently to take debit or credit card in all of the regional offices. We understand we are to take checks and cash. We have not quite gotten set up for that, but we have been working in earnest towards it. It involves setting up bank accounts in every location where we have a regional office. We're already busy at work with that, but primarily we have relied on temporary staffing in order to get staff up to a full complement, and the agreement with temporary agencies, temporary staff can't handle cash. So I can tell you that we're working towards it, and we hope sooner. We have cash accepted in Frankfurt, and we're soon to be able to open it up to that in Lexington, and you'll start seeing it move to the other offices.
Okay. Representative Brad.
Chairman Hignan, this is
Yes.
Senator Smith. I'm sorry, I've been having difficulty getting my phone to unmute, but yeah, that was the concern I had, is that some people actually don't have credit cards or debit cards, or the ones that they do have, the complaints I've been getting are not accepted, or something's going on where either the system's down or offline, or their cards are being declined. So I do think we need to speed up letting people have cash. I've had a couple complaints of people going over there and taking off work and not taking their card, or they did not realize it didn't take cash, and they're very, very upset when they leave there, and they're upset at us. So I hope we get this cleared up.
Absolutely. We're making it a priority. Like I say, the pilot program in Frankfurt's already been very successful, and now we can just roll that out to other locations. It does take a little bit of time to set it up, just do the financial portion of it, but we've got a good plan in place, and we'll continue to execute it.
Okay. Representative Bratcher.
Thank you. 2 questions. First one, right now, can I catch a flight without a real ID?
Yes, sir. Until May of 2023.
Okay. And the second question is, can I right now go on this website and apply for a real ID?
Your real ID, the first issuance, requires an in-person visit with the proper documentation. But after that, you may renew, and we do have some people that are already renewing real IDs that have been issued, but you may only renew online currently.
And are they, another question, they're taken in person now, because for a long time it was hard to get because of the COVID situation.
We were only shut down for about 3 weeks, and we were back open to in-person transactions.
But you had long appointment waits, right?
There were some, but they've all gotten much better now, and we do accept walk-ins as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Representative Branscombe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for your testimony today. I'll make this quick. I believe I heard this mentioned, but with regards to the regional offices, there are some gaps in the state, especially when you look at southeastern Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
Are those going to be filled, or Is there a plan in place for that?
We
Thank
are
you.
working diligently on those,
Okay.
and we have our eyes on some, and we've met and partnered with Finance Cabinet, and they're working their magic now.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Representative Smith.
You mentioned the expansions. Is Corbin on that list? Do you have the list of expansions? You said Manchester.
No, Manchester has an executed lease. None of the other places that we're looking at, I'm not really comfortable discussing yet because we're not even at an executed lease point. I don't want to, tamper with the process.
Well, what is the process? Do we make a request to you as a representative and make a request for an office to be put in?
We certainly receive requests from legislators as well as constituents, and we certainly consider everything that we've received. There will be an office in that area, I believe.
The concern, I wasn't here when they passed all this stuff. And the concern, I'm talking about the clerks getting rid of, out of the courthouse, the driver's license, which looking at, I think was a bad idea, but I don't have any say in that. The real ID is also a difficult in my area. When they go to Somerset, they try to get an appointment. I've heard some feedback on that, on getting the appointments. But I guess the reason I mentioned Corbin is because in looking for a regional area, do you have a formula that you don't want somebody to drive over a certain number of hours? We're looking at 5 hours to come from Everts to Somerset. Do you have a timeline, kind of like the bus districts try to do on getting kids to school?
We're continuing to evaluate all that. We want something that's close to each area. We don't want anyone to have an excessive drive.
So what is that timeline that you're working off of?
Well, we do that in balance, not between just geographic, but also population centers as well. So like Sarah mentioned in her opening statements, those 5 or 6 criteria, we use all of those for developing where the next locations will be. And then we also look to see what traffic go to the existing ones and then where that leaves gaps. So after a while, it starts to kind of tell you exactly the right spot to be.
And what about the formula on number of employees? The circuit clerks are going to be moving out because they don't have the license anymore and moving into this office. Is there a formula for that? So
AOC has assumed all of those people into the court side, so nobody will lose their jobs in this transition.
Okay, so, and won't be any additional jobs. So we're just transitioning those number of employees to another office.
AOC has adopted those, but they're also welcome to apply for any of the full-time positions that we post. If they're driver's license people and they want to continue that in their career, we definitely have a spot for them.
Well, again, I want to make sure that I get this said because it's going to be a bomb one day when all this transitions. They can't go to the courthouse anymore to get their driver's license. And I just want to be on saying this, that they have a very short drive right now going to the courthouse. And if we get into a 3 to 5 hour drive, we're going to have a mess.
No, we won't have anyone driving near that far. And plus, we also have our pop-up portable units that we're developing. We're going to bring that to the community so people can drive just to the same distance
Well,
that
you
they had
mentioned
previously.
Manchester, and if you come from the head of one of my hollers, it's 3 hours right now.
Right. We're working on filling in more of the map.
Okay, put one in Barville then. That's the only request I have then.
Thank you, Representative Smith. We need to move along. Senator Smith. Representative Tackett-Laverty.
Just a couple quick questions. You said there was a telephone number. So when you are you talking about for a help option? Are you talking about a telephone number that's available online? If you're having trouble filling it out, can they find it online?
If the page fails for any reason, then the number pops up for them to call right away.
Okay, great. And, we do have an office open in Floyd County, and I do know that office is doing very well, transitioning very well. We don't have long appointment times, but I do want to know for some of our surrounding counties. I do also see that Magoffin County's maybe on this list in transition, but I do want to ask for our neighbors such as Pike County. With these mobile units, do we have some sort of projection as to how many times they'll visit and possibly where they'll visit? Like, will they be visiting the clerk's offices or?
We're
Are we going to
coordinating-
try to make it easy for people?
Oh, yeah. We're coordinating the program with the local officials. That way we can kind of have a collaborative approach, finding where's the best place to come, whether it's a community center, courthouse, conference room, whatever the locals population decides is best. We're glad to show up anywhere that has electricity and Wi-Fi.
Okay.
And the House Bill 453 did set a minimum number of times per county based on population.
Okay, based on population. Thank you very much.
Senator Higdon, this is Senator Smith. Have you got time for me to ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, there's a delay. I'm trying to unmute. My question is about the information. This has been a topic that's been discussed for several years now. And my question is, who is collecting the data that we're now putting in for the Real ID? Is that a Kentucky office that's staying in Kentucky, or is this information being handled by a third party? And if so, is that third party outside of the boundaries? Is it out of the state of Kentucky? Is it out of the country? But just tell me on who's handling this information that we're getting, where is it being processed, and who has access to it?
Sure. We have it all stored in the KIDLIS database, the Kentucky Driver's License Information System, and that's maintained by the state, COT, and KYTC.
Okay, we're running short on time. Thank you, Senator Smith. Very good discussion, and like I said, we plan to have you here every month to keep us updated, and we certainly appreciate your work. I will tell the members that Sarah Jackson is very good on calling the community if you need her to call the radio station, do an interview. Communication is key in this transition, and like I said, she's very good at explaining it and trying to make sure we have a smooth transition. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for your work, and really do appreciate your dedication to make sure that this is a smooth transition. Thank you.
Well, we certainly appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
you.
Next, we'll hear from the Kentucky State Police. Would y'all please? Captain Marshall Johnson and Major Day. The floor is yours. If you don't mind, identify yourself and please proceed. We're talking about the conversion to regional offices, our regional, set up for drivers testing and also for permit testing. So please proceed.
Yes, sir. I'm Major Nathan Day. I'm over the driver's testing branch and vehicle enforcement. Captain Marshall is our expert on the driver's testing matter.
I'm Captain Marshall Johnson. I'm the commander of the driver testing branch for KSP, and on behalf of Commissioner Burnett and the state police, we appreciate the opportunity to talk about the regional testing plans, and what we would like to try to do is convey some information today that hopefully is helpful to everyone. We realize that there are a number of questions about the process. It's heavily tied to the transition of the circuit court clerks and their responsibilities over to transportation. So hopefully I can offer some information that is helpful to everyone. As has been mentioned, that transition is already ongoing with the conclusion date of next year in June. To that end, the testing part of it will remain the responsibility of the Kentucky State Police. The vision screening, road testing, and permit testing all will remain under the oversight of the Kentucky State Police. So in an effort just to support the Transportation Cabinet and to streamline that entire process, we too will regionalize our testing services. So applicants who are required to test, for vision or screening, any kind of testing they need to obtain their license or permit, we'll be taking care of that, and we hope to have it all in the same place. So you've heard already that there are a number of locations, 18 that are already up, that are already established, and more to come. Our hope is to have a presence at each of those locations, and sometimes less in others, in some than others. But we hope to eventually have a presence in each of those locations. In some cases, KSP has already made the decision to regionalize testing in advance of that transition of licensing services. And what this does for us is it allows us to maximize our resources and provide a more efficient testing process for the people that patronize our services. We're hoping that by doing so, the result is greater efficiency and expanded availability as it relates to testing appointments. We have a number of counties that, for example, would test on a Tuesday and Wednesday. And the testing there would be half a day of written testing and half a day of road testing. And by shifting to a regional setting, kind of like it is in Frankfurt, we switched that testing site to a regional location here recently. And what that does is allow us to offer testing Monday through Friday and all day for each testing platform that we have. So just the availability of it all really exceeds, and in some cases far exceeds, what we could offer on a county by county platform. The thing to remember is that there is a transition. We would encourage the patience of everyone as we switch these long time historically, we've been county by county, and we've got great relationships with the clerks and even better relationships with the transportation cabinet. But it is a transition as they learn the new roads, new processes, and the inner workings of those relationships, even at the regional locations. We will continuously examine those situations and try to offer as many appointments in the most efficient way as we can. Outside of that, there are multiple administrators in that setting, so that in a county by county setting, more often than not, you would have one examiner that would cover multiple counties. They would be in one location on Tuesday and Wednesday, and Monday, Thursday, and Friday in totally different county, with no backup for those appointments. So here in a regional setting, I know I can more reasonably guarantee that if we have someone out sick, we got a child sick, just life happens. And so when we have multiple examiners in the same place, I can more so guarantee that we don't have to cancel those appointments, and business will continue as usual. For us, regionalizing the testing services has already begun. KSP has already announced regional testing sites in Catlettsburg, Columbia, Frankfurt, Elizabethtown, Jackson, Moorhead, Prestonsburg, and Somerset. So additional offices, as mentioned, are under the development in connection with KYTC and what they're building out, trying to fill those holes. Those holes are equally the same for us. We want to make sure that we reach every population, that no one in particular has to drive a significant distance. So we'll try to occupy and work with transportation in every location that they open. While much of our effort has been concentrated in central and eastern Kentucky at this point, we're also working on northern and western Kentucky locations to also open. Ms. Jackson mentioned Hopkinsville and Manchester. We're continuously in conversation with them so we can be as much on the same page as they are. In the meantime, we'll continue to work with the local officials in those areas to have no interruption in the testing services. In those areas that are already open, we are hearing significant feedback. The trend that we're seeing is there's a rush of appointments right at the beginning, and then it tapers off where you can get in and get an appointment right away. In Jackson, Catlettsburg, Columbia, Moorhead, if you went onto our website right now, you could get an appointment within the next day or so or next week. Some are more further out, a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and that's somewhat by design, trying to keep it compact and keep it so that we don't have a ton of no-shows, which tends to exist or create itself as you get further out from your appointment time. People just forget. So right now, the road test seems to be trending in the same way. So we're seeing the benefits already of the regionalization of our testing sites. We've also heard about the hardship in terms of driving, and that's something, again, we've already talked about. We understand that for some, you have a significant drive, and some are right around the corner, but we're continuing to work with transportation to make sure we again, fill in the holes, make sure that there are locations that can have access to the testing services that we have without significant impediment or obstacles for them. Here recently, I guess I should say also that there are other considerations on how we're testing, why we are deciding to regionalize in some places and not others right away. Part of the consideration is the personnel, so the county by county setup that we had before, those were highly dependent upon one person, one examiner covering and being assigned to a certain population. So we've tried to keep those populations paired up with the examiner. Bear in mind that wherever we send them, they have to travel as well. So we understand that if we're having an examiner or administrator travel for an hour, we also have to consider their travel time, their expenses, their time and effort. So moving from that county by county model, we have to figure that in as well. So we're just trying to keep everything together and make sure that we can continue to offer services and that's not interrupted at all. Oldham County has been one that's come up here recently. So it's a good example because for some, they might be closer to Louisville. However, Louisville's already got their own population that we're trying to deal with and get additional testing for and provide additional services for. So ultimately, they end up standing at the back of a long line in Louisville versus being able to go in next week in Frankfort. So those are some of the considerations as well. We recognize there are some spots that still have some needs for additional testing and needs for additional services that we provide. So in closing, our ultimate goal is just really to be have every person to be able to test whenever and wherever they want to test. But in the meantime, our hope is that transitioning to this regional model will help us to continue to provide services, continue to provide those efficiently. And in the meantime, we'll be working on advancing our testing processes, increasing and improving our related technology, improving our communication with the public. That's one of the things that we've heard feedback on, and making sure that they have the information that they need to get this, for some, a benchmark in their lives, the 16-year-olds, or the people that just need it for work or other issues. If they have concerns, if they have issues, we have tried to work out those situations. If someone calls to say, my office to say that I need this for work or I need this for some other reason, we're working those situations out, and we won't let anybody go without if we can help it. So, and finally, we just want to reduce the wait times at our locations. We know that that's an issue as well. So, I'll take any questions.
Well, thank you all for being here today, and we'll certainly try to get updates from you as we go forward, and to be supportive of what you're doing. I know that this transition is challenging, and we want to make sure that it's done right and give you the tools that you need. But I guess my understanding is that a young person comes, takes a driver's test, they will be able to get their driver's license or their permit while they're there that day. They won't have to make another trip back to the regional office to get that. They'll be available that day when they take their driver's testing.
In the regional locations, the setup is in the same place, so we don't want to have people going, going to Frankfurt and then have to go to a whole other county to get their actual issuance. And they'll flow into the transportation process after they're done testing with us.
Has there been any consideration, given I know other states have a online permit testing where they could do their permit online instead of coming into the regional office? Have you give that any consideration?
Yes, sir, we have. But right now we have instituted or started the process of, again, implementing a large scale update to our auto test system, which will make all of this much more efficient. Getting out of many centuries behind in terms of our testing process. Many counties, we just offer a written test. We give them a piece of paper and we check it off. We'll be moving to an electronic version of that all over the state and even implementing the use of tablets. So we're in the process of updating it, so it won't be, again, such an impediment. That won't be an impediment for people.
Okay, thank you very much. Representative Upchurch, did you have a comment?
Thank you. Thank you for the job that you're doing. You know, I know we all are kind of suffering through all this, and it's not a predicament that any of us asked for, having to move everything to regional. You know, it goes back a couple of years ago to the Circuit Court Clerks Association basically refusal to issue the real IDs, and that threw everything into a lot of turmoil, especially on some of us here in the legislature trying to figure out how we were going to navigate this. You know, we were sent a letter from the Clerks Association stating, you know, that exact fact, that they would no longer be participating in the issuance of real ID. And we can't have two different issuing agencies issuing regular driver's licenses and real IDs. So that really threw us into a turmoil. And so that's part of the reason we're here today. And I know a lot of people, you know, trying to figure out why in the heck are we just now, or why are we going through this process? Everything seemed to be doing fine up until then. But we all got a kink in the plan, you know, based on that letter and that refusal to follow through with the job at hand as far as issuing those real IDs. And so we had to figure out a plan, and so here we are. And Sarah, thank you for the job that you all are doing, and then moving the driver's license testing to the regional model is just part of that. But it's going to be cumbersome. It already is cumbersome. There's going to be a lot of people that's upset over it. But the education process that we've got to go through, and then, you know, doing it online, I think is simplifying things where you can direct people to that website that they can renew online. Hopefully we'll get to the point where they can take their own picture and send that to you, because you know, some people don't like their driver's license picture. But you know, that's kind of some of the history, the background of why we are where we are today. And if any of you all would like to see that letter, I know Senator Higdon's got a copy. I've got a copy of it, and we would be happy to disseminate that to any of the members. Thank you.
Representative McCool has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure I understand. For a young person who's going for their driver's license, for previously they could go to their county, their county seat, and practice their route to get their driver's license. Now they're going to have to drive maybe 2 hours, or somebody's going to drive them there 2 hours just to take their test, which they probably haven't had much opportunity to practice because it's located 2 hours away. Am I understanding this correctly, or not? Because I can see that being a real problem for young folks trying to.
Yes, sir. So our testing course is not specific to a road or street or highway. It is specific to some principles that are established through the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. So there's just a standard. The hope is that parents, driving schools, anybody that's providing instruction in terms of driving, teach their kids how to drive, and that's not inclusive of a specific road or a specific course. That if you have if you can complete the appropriate maneuvers that are included in that we score you on, that you be able to do those in any locale, any location, on any street and highway, because that's what they ultimately have to do once we cut them loose and be out on the road. So that is a concern for a lot of people. It's something that we've heard, but I would just continue to encourage folks to read the manual, go over the maneuvers that are responsible, that are covered in the test. We go strictly by the manual, both with the written test. All the maneuvers are covered within the operator's manual that is available on our website. And if they can complete those maneuvers, whether they're in Jackson or Catlettsburg, that they should be fine.
Okay, sorry to cut you off, but we've got Captain Johnson, Major Day. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you for your service, and look forward to hearing from you again next month. Thank you all
sir.
very much.
Thank you.
Our next presenters is an issue that's been around for several years. It's somewhat like electric cars and autonomous cars, and a lot of the issues that were futuristic issues that we're dealing with. P2P, if the platform for it's the I guess it's the Airbnb of rental car business. And so I guess to kick it off, looks like James Higdon, you're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to members of the committee. For the record, I am James Higdon, no relation, of MML&K Government Solutions, and I'm joined today remotely by my colleague at MML&K, Chris Nolan, as well as two representatives from the peer-to-peer car sharing industry, Ethan Wilson, who is of counsel for the platform Turo, as well as John Van Arsdale, who's the head of government relations for Avail, which is an Allstate company. Both Ethan and John have participated in legislative discussions all across the U.S. and offer a comprehensive 50-state perspective to the regulatory environment informing peer-to-peer car sharing. With that introduction, John, I believe you're online and available. If you could please kick off your prepared remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for this hearing on peer-to-peer car sharing. Again, my name is John Van Arsdale. I lead government relations for Avail Car Sharing, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Allstate Insurance, where we currently operate a car sharing platform in 11 states across the country and looking to continue that expansion throughout this year and onward. Brief background for those who are unaware, like the chairman said, peer-to-peer car sharing is similar to Airbnb, but for your cars, where our platforms allow individuals who own vehicles to put them on a platform so that they can be borrowed by neighbors, travelers, business folks coming in and out of town for a temporary period of time, while those owners of the vehicles actually get to earn some passive income through the sharing of that asset that they have paid for. The issue we've been discussing, as James mentioned, is the proper regulatory structure for peer-to-peer car sharing. The bill that has been considered in Kentucky, and we've had some success enacting across the country, primarily deals with insurance and consumer protection. Insurance is a critical component of the car sharing practice. In the proposal, which is based off the National Council of Insurance Legislators model bill, which has been championed and adopted by Representative Bart Rowland out of Kentucky, is the consensus work from peer-to-peer car sharing companies, insurance companies and their trade associations, the car rental industry, and insurance regulators. It really ensures that during this process, there will never be an insurance gap. It provides the flexibility that the coverage required under state law would be covered by either a driver's policy, an owner's policy, the platform, or some combination. We've worked really hard to make sure that, without doubt, nobody in the sharing process ever has to worry about any coverage gaps. And that's why we include the coverage price in the pricing model with Avail, as do our colleagues in the space. The other components, like I said, of the proposal really deal with the consumer protections. We make sure that we have recall notification requirements, we have license verification requirements, requiring our platforms to provide roadside assistance for the drivers of these vehicles, again, so that everybody can be protected. This model is again just a really consumer focused model that we are in big support of, and it's kind of an interesting dynamic. I don't think there's too many emerging industries that are trying to actively ask for proper regulation, but we believe it's important to enact this across the country so that everybody can be protected during the sharing process. No, my colleague at Turo, Ethan, is going to discuss some of the other issues, but we really appreciate taking the time to consider this and look forward to the discussion today.
John, thank you. And I do want to ask that any of you all who are doing prepared statements, if you don't mind sharing those with staff so we can share them with our members, if you don't mind. Thank you. Back to you. James, back to you, I guess.
Ethan, please proceed. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Can you all hear me loud and clear? All right. Excellent. Chairman Higdon and Chairman Upchurch and members of the committee, my name is Ethan Wilson. I'm with you today on behalf of Turo, an internet-based peer-to-peer car sharing platform. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. Turo is a peer-to-peer car sharing platform that connects car owners with those in need of transportation. Neighbors, families, students, workers, vacationers, anyone with the need or desire for transportation. On the Turo platform, car owners, or hosts, as we like to call them, have 100% pricing power over their cars. Essentially, they set their own price. Hosts earn extra income to help cover the rising costs of car ownership, student loans, medical bills, rent, you name it, while at the same time allowing more and more drivers or guests to have access to an existing supply of vehicles in Kentucky. Guests can choose from hundreds of different makes, models, and price points to find the perfect car for their specific transportation needs. And it is, I think, very important to note that Turo owns no vehicles whatsoever. No mid-sized sedans or economy classes, no minivans or luxury coupes. However, the men and women hosting cars on our platform do own vehicles. These are Kentuckians who own family station wagons and trucks, cars that take children from school to soccer practice, and SUVs and minivans that go on family road trips. These cars are not owned by corporations that acquire cars sales tax free and rent them out and then sell them like a car dealer. These cars are purchased with motor vehicle usage tax paid at the time of purchase, registered, titled, and owned by men and women in Kentucky. And these cars are owned by an amazing network of moms and dads, students and workers across the Bluegrass State that make up the very fabric of who Turo is and who our peer-to-peer car sharing platform is made up of. In previous legislative sessions, there has been discussion about what the tax structure for peer-to-peer car sharing looks like as compared to traditional rental car in the Commonwealth. Notably, there has been much misinformation and confusion as to tax parity and how tax is applied to peer-to-peer car sharing. Well, I am here to hopefully clear that up, and I'm here to discuss exactly how Kentucky's motor vehicle usage tax currently applies in equitable fashion to both peer-to-peer car sharing and traditional rental car. So that takes me to Kentucky's motor vehicle usage tax. KRS 138-460 levies a 6% tax on the retail price of motor vehicles at the time the vehicle is titled or registered. This is the black letter law of the motor vehicle usage tax in Kentucky. And this is the rule, not the exception. Every person on this committee has surely purchased a vehicle at some time in the past and paid this 6% tax, just as every Kentucky Turo host has done the same when purchasing his or her vehicle. Now, rental car companies are also subject to the same 6% motor vehicle usage tax. However, what's sometimes failed to mention is that when discussing taxation of traditional rental car as compared to peer-to-peer car sharing, it's that traditional rental car companies have an option as to how this 6% tax is paid, an option that is not available to individual Kentuckians. Pursuant to KRS 138-463, traditional rental car companies, or U-Drive-Its, as they're called in statute, can either pay the 6% motor vehicle usage tax upon the retail price of a motor vehicle, just like any other normal Kentuckian. Or they can also, or instead of, they may collect the motor vehicle usage tax of 6% from their customers as calculated on a gross rental charges paid by the customer, essentially a per transaction basis. That's why when you rent a vehicle in the state of Kentucky, you see that 6% tax itemized on the point of sale receipt, right? Because that 6% tax is actually not paid in that case upon the acquisition of that vehicle. It's an either or framework. So let's be clear, this 6% motor vehicle usage tax is intended to only be paid once. Rental car companies just have the luxury of having the option of not paying it upon the purchase of their vehicles, but rather having their customers pay it on a per transaction gross receipts basis. But this does not change the fact that the 6% is applied once. Importantly, traditional rental car companies could easily avoid the 6% tax on the back end on that per transaction basis by simply paying the 6% tax upon the purchase of the vehicle. And this is spelled out clearly in statute. If it makes things easier, the legislature could simply take away that option in which everyone would then have to pay that 6% on the front end, and there would be no collection on the back end. But right now, rental car companies do have the option of either or. Furthermore, according to the nonpartisan LRC staff, who have recently researched this very issue, assessing another 6% tax on peer-to-peer car sharing when the usage tax on those vehicles has already been paid at the time of purchase or registering would almost certainly be viewed as double taxation and draw a legal challenge. Ultimately, traditional rental car companies would love to see peer-to-peer car sharing subject to Kentucky's motor vehicle usage tax twice, right? Once on the front end, at that 6% paid at the time of purchase, and again on the back end on a per transaction basis, which is when you would see that 6% itemized on, say, a customer receipt. Because traditional rental car companies are not subject to the motor vehicle usage twice, this would represent a huge competitive advantage for them. And this then illustrates that any parity that would require peer-to-peer car sharing to be subject to the motor vehicle usage tax on the front end, the 6% when you purchase the car, and then again 6% on a per transaction basis, would also necessarily need to apply to traditional rental car companies as well, thereby requiring rental car companies to pay the 6% motor vehicle usage tax at both the time they purchase a vehicle and subject customers to it on a per transaction basis on the back end. This highlights that there is taxing parity right now between peer-to-peer car sharing and traditional rental car with regards to the motor vehicle usage tax in Kentucky. And notably, Kentucky is one of very few states that does not apply a separate excise tax on the rental car industry. So if a separate tax, a new tax, is contemplated by the legislature moving forward or next session, it would only make sense to apply it to both peer-to-peer car sharing and traditional rental car on a go-forward basis. So I know that was a lot of information. With all that said, on behalf of Turo and our wonderful car sharing community in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, we are thankful and excited for the opportunity to provide input during this process. We understand that this is an ongoing process, that this is an iterative process, but that together we can ensure the accessibility and fairness of peer-to-peer car sharing for Kentucky residents for decades. We view Kentucky as our partner, a partner increasing transportation options for Kentuckians that previously did not exist, a partner ushering in an era of more efficient use of existing assets, and a partner creating a dynamic new network providing financial empowerment that may not have existed previously to the people of Kentucky. So thank you for your time today, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. Happy to take questions.
Back to you, James. I do want to mention Representative Rowland and Representative Dawson, who have done a lot of work on the this particular issue and have drafted legislation, and so I do want to mention them. Senator Wheeler has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, guests, for coming and testifying here today. And I agree that I don't think it's the legislature's purpose to give any industry a competitive advantage of one industry over another. But, I think it does concern me in general that neither of these, rental services are paying any type of tax to the Commonwealth. And so, I think clearly there's a lot of money being made. I mean, most of these rental cars now are booked online, so it shouldn't be very difficult to keep track of what's going on here. And, at a time when our Commonwealth and specifically our road fund is starved for funds, I really think that we should look at imposing a tax or a fee on these vehicles to help get some more revenue into our road fund to make much needed repairs, especially in our rural areas. So really more of a comment than a question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Wheeler. James?
Senator Wheeler, I'll make a first run at the response and then allow our guests to add anything to that. But the reason the testimony was focused specifically on this point of sale transaction and the different methodologies for the motor vehicle usage tax is that's just one component of the full tax spectrum, and our hosts, both Vail and Turo, whenever they utilize that non currently utilized asset to generate income, they do receive a 1099 from those companies at the end of the year and report that as taxable individual income on an individual basis. So perhaps we should have done a better job of giving the full spectrum of taxation. It's not a it's not a transaction that's fully devoid of any tax implication for the state, but our hosts do pay individual income taxes on the sharing that they do in the Commonwealth. I'll throw it to my game quick.
Brief follow-up, if I might, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I guess, but it's not, obviously, if you're going to be renting these cars, they're going to be used more on the road, which causes more wear and tear. It's not doing anything to, even with the 1099, to replenish our road funds or to compensate for that additional usage and wear and tear on our transportation system in the Commonwealth, is it?
Respectfully, these motor vehicles, let's say you're going to get a nice Jeep or any type of a vehicle that, they can't drive without gasoline. And our motor vehicle fuels tax also helps pay and improve. So one way to consider it is that if the vehicle is actually in use instead of sitting in a garage, that too is helping fund our roadways. And once again, the purpose of the motor vehicle usage tax is to help offset some of the costs of operating otherwise freely on the roadways. So I'm not intending to split hairs, Senator. That's just my response. If the other folks from our group are interested in adding to that, feel free.
Senator Berg has a question.
Thank you, sir. I'm just trying to understand real quickly the finances on the side of the rental car companies. If they buy a car for $10,000, so they defer $600 worth of tax and rent that car out 100 times and charge $6, so they've paid off that tax. Do they continue to pay that tax? So do they end up paying more tax over time if they choose this option? Or do they stop paying that tax after they've paid what they would have originally owed?
Senator Berg, I know the chairman's allotted time for the rent-a-car industry to speak today, and respectfully, I'd like to defer to them on exactly how to answer that.
Thank you.
Does that conclude your testimony for now, James?
Indeed, it does. We're
okay.
Open for questions.
Okay, we have one more question, Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask Ethan a quick question. So you mentioned that or maybe Jimmy mentioned about generating a 1099. Are there any other transaction fees or any other costs associated during this exchange of goods or services, I should say?
Through the chair. So is that a question about services or taxes or fees that would be recouped by the state?
Yeah. What's the total cost to the individual when they go through your platform?
So taking into account the 6% motor vehicle usage tax that's paid by the vehicle owner in this case, that's not then itemized on the back end. And then, of course, there are vehicle registration fees that any other Kentuckian who owns a vehicle would pay, but there's not a transaction fee or tax on the transaction currently. And on a rental car transaction, there is that 6%. And then they also have a recovery fee that's separate, that doesn't go to the state. That's just a mechanism for them to recover their own costs. So that was a little bit of a roundabout way to answer your question. On top of that 6% that's paid by the owner at the time of that vehicle being purchased, no, there is not.
What about you all? How do you generate your fees? You have an agreement with each individual host, or what?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So to the chair, that's a great question. There's sort of a third-party service fee, if you will, for using the Turo platform.
So there is a transaction fee then. So there is additional. Is that embedded in the cost you give it back to the host? And then the host has to pass that on to the customer. Is that right?
No. So that would be a customer paid on that transaction. However, the host, as far as the insurance framework goes, is also paying a fee for essentially what amounts to that insurance coverage that's provided, because the insurance coverage is inherently part of the transaction.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and we'll move along to our next presenter.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask something real quick on that?
Representative Smith, real quick.
I apologize because I'm not even familiar with what we're even discussing today, so I'd like to try to clear something. My understanding in your opening statement was, and I could tell that the concern is a 6% tax. And that's been the hold up on this legislation, that how a tax is going to be implemented. If a 1099 is occurring and you're running a business, would that be considered the person that has the vehicle that's loaning it to your service to be used? Are they running a business then? Are they subject to occupational tax? Are they subject to, are you subject to the 6% sales tax since you're operating the company, the upper tier company? So are you subject to the 6% sales and usage tax? If you clear that up, I kind of see where you're going with it.
Sure. So through the chair, so the 6% is based on the widget, right? And the widget in this case is the vehicle. That is the source of that tax. And for normal Kentuckians, we'll say, right, individual men and women who purchase their cars, they have to pay that upon registering, which is essentially upon the purchase of that vehicle. And that 6% then on that widget is satisfied. And so that's what our hosts pay when they purchase those cars. And then at this point in time, that 6% is not levied again, because that would actually go against the black letter of the motor vehicle usage tax, which is designed to be applied on, say, a per widget basis. And I will say there is an exception to that. And the exception to that is allowing you drive-its per statute to forego having to pay that on the front end in order to recoup that on a per transaction basis on the back end. And to a question that was answered earlier, the gross amount of revenue that's then received by the state, or I should say collected and remitted, would actually depend on how long that vehicle is owned in a fleet for.
Just a quick follow-up then. What I want to make sure that I understand where you're going with the 6%. So you're saying they're not really setting up a company to be putting their vehicle into. So the 1099, when you said 1099, that's what got my direction. If they're receiving a 1099, they're in operating some sort of a business. So they're receiving the 1099 for their service, for the revenue. So the revenue's coming in. So you're saying you're not wanting the 6% added as a sales tax. That's your position, right? Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
So even though I've had my vehicle for 5 years and I determined I want your company to start utilizing it, you're saying I shouldn't pay 6% on it even though I'm receiving revenue and there's a transaction being made. So you want exemption from the transaction on sales tax. That's what you're asking for.
No, so it would not be an exemption. It's actually the way the law is effectuated right now, is that if that 6% tax is satisfied upon the purchase of the vehicle, and again, that's the rule, not the exception, that then that 6% is not in any other way applicable to transactions that involve that widget, which in this case is that car.
What about the occupational? If they're bringing in revenue in the county, are they subject to the 1% or whatever percentage of occupational to be determined?
Sure. So that would be up to the individual that is subject to those taxes, the individual Turo host in this case. Now, when a 1099 is submitted, I'm not sure if Kentucky is tethered to the IRS on 1099 MISC and 1099Ks. But if they are, that would be triggered as low as $600. And so if there is a certain amount of money that's then made or garnered by that individual, that would then trigger that 1099 as sort of an independent contractor, which would be the same as if somebody created revenue in any way, shape, or form above a certain threshold, because the state would deem that as taxable income.
Thank you, Representative Smith. Our next up is John McCarthy and James Nelson. Somebody has some background noise.
Yeah, that's me, Senator. I'm sorry, I'm stuck in an airport.
That's okay. We figured it was you.
So I'll let James Nelson, the Enterprise Rent-A-Car, take the show.
James, please identify yourself for the record and please proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is James Nelson of Enterprise Holdings here in Kentucky. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak regarding this issue. Enterprise Holdings is a parent company of Enterprise Rent-A-Car, National Alamo rental car brands. We provide total transportation solutions that include truck rental, fleet management, car sharing, and of course, car rental under our brands. That's why we're here today. Enterprise is a dynamic company that's been operating in Kentucky since 1991. We love Kentucky. I moved my family here just over a year ago. I got to tell you, it's a great state and great place to raise a family. We invest here. We hire people here. We pay taxes here. We're committed to the state. We currently employ 950 Kentuckians and have more than 90 locations around the state and a fleet of nearly 12,000 cars and trucks. We appreciate the chairman's invitation and the committee's time and attention to the changing landscape of transportation services and the emerging peer-to-peer rental car market. We are also bullish and excited about the future and what technological advances are doing to innovate new ways of delivering services, particularly in our industry. In fact, as a company, we've invested over $3 billion in the last several years in technology to better and more seamlessly serve our customers. All rental car companies make vehicles available through online applications. The difference between the models between us and a peer-to-peer platform is the source of those vehicles. Car rental companies own the vehicles where peer-to-peer rental companies outsource vehicles owned by others. But it's all car rental. There are peer-to-peer companies operating across the country and in Kentucky, offering vehicles at both airport and non-airport locations. Peer-to-peer is to car rental what Airbnb is to hotel industry. An individual allows their personal vehicle to be rented to another individual via a third-party platform for a fee. However, unlike Airbnb, which collects and remits sales and rooms taxes, peer-to-peer companies are not currently collecting or remitting any taxes or airport-related fees. While an individual vehicle owner may pay a 6% vehicle usage tax in Kentucky when purchasing a vehicle, the intent behind that purchase is largely to use that vehicle as one's personal use and not for revenue-generating purposes. Peer-to-peer rentals can increase the amount of time and number of vehicles on the road. The renters of these private vehicles, therefore, should also contribute to the road fund the same way as they would if they were renting from incumbent rental car companies. Additionally, peer-to-peer companies, which gain access to vehicles from owners, have paid no tax, yet they are profiting from the transaction. Now more than ever, the potential for the lost road fund revenue has increased as the pandemic has created unprecedented shortage in vehicle availability with traditional rental car companies. That's through the highly publicized semiconductor chip shortage and vehicle shortage. We're unable to meet the market's demands, which opens up opportunity for services such as peer-to-peer to come in and meet those demands. The incumbent rental car companies operate under the You Drive It tax, collect and remit the same 6% use fee at the point of the sale of the transaction, which goes to the road fund. We've discussed that. what we're advocating for is Kentucky should apply this fee to peer-to-peer transactions because the vehicle purchased for private use is now being used completely for a completely different purpose, a revenue-generating purpose. This fee would be applied to the transaction and ultimately paid by the renter. No additional responsibility would be placed to the vehicle owner. They're simply a vehicle for the transaction. These revenues would also go to the road fund. Other states such as Nevada, Florida, and Arizona have recently enacted laws and taxes applicable to peer-to-peer transactions, whether the vehicle owner paid the tax or not. DeSantis just signed a piece of legislation into law last week. And we've already mentioned Bart Rowland, but we would like to thank Representative Rowland and the legislators from across the country who have been working in the NCOIL model to develop the insurance framework that should protect the consumer at the end of the day. While essentially providing the same services we do recognize there are three parties in this peer-to-peer: the vehicle owner, the platform, and the renter, and therefore a slightly different insurance framework does make sense, which is highlighted in the NCOIL framework. Again, I'd like to thank you all for your time today, and at this time, I'll do my best to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, James. And I will, you mentioned those states that were taxing the transaction fee. In my research, I think 23 states have passed the NCOIL legislation that deals with the insurance portion of the transaction. 5 states currently do tax the rental of the peer-to-peer vehicles. So I think that's 18 states have passed peer-to-peer legislation. Arizona, Florida, Maryland, Nevada, Virginia, and West Virginia have passed legislation to tax that transaction for peer-to-peer car rental, if my research is correct.
As far as I know, that is correct.
Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Matt, this is Chris Nolan. May I make a comment to your comments there?
Please proceed. Identify yourself for the record, Chris.
Chris Nolan with MMLK Government Solutions on behalf of both Turo and Allstate. Appreciate the time to be able to speak to the committee today. You are correct that a number of states have passed the what's commonly referred to as the NCOIL model dealing with the insurance and consumer protections. And many of those states have passed some form of taxation on the peer-to-peer industry. However, all those states that did that, put a tax on the peer-to-peer industry, did so because there are existing excise taxes on rental car companies that exist in those states. Kentucky is a state that has no excise taxes on its rental car purchase or rental car transactions. And thus, the reason that we ask for a level playing field, that if a level of taxation is to be placed on the peer-to-peer car sharing platform, that the same taxation be placed on rental car companies. Because again, we're one of 7 states that don't put any additional excise taxes on rental car companies. Right now, they're only paying the usage tax, and we're only paying the usage tax. And there are no other taxes that are collected going into the road fund.
Representative Thomas has a question.
Yes, we appreciate both of y'all's testimony on that. I happened to pull up the Turo app just for a sec there, and out of the top 10 of a place that I'm thinking of going, 8 of them were Teslas for rent instead. So the road tax, none of them use gas, so that's not going to help our road fund too much on that. But my question too was, one of them, they're renting a 1967 Volkswagen Beetle. I know Enterprise has to keep extensive maintenance records. What are the maintenance records requirements for some of these? I mean, 1967, I don't even think they had seatbelts back then. So what are the requirements compared to y'all for maintenance records?
That's a question for me, I assume. Sorry.
Well, I know with Enterprise, I know y'all have to keep pretty extensive records, where I'm assuming as an individual, if you're renting it, are there stipulations? I know Uber, I think you have to have a certain age car and newer, something like that.
They try to keep a mileage cap on that, correct? Yeah. In terms of the old vehicles, I can't speak to how those vehicles are maintained. We do operate a very safe fleet. We are subject to national laws as well as state laws that require us to adhere to very safe and stringent safety regulations. I cannot speak for peer-to-peer, but I do not believe that they have those same requirements.
And I'm happy to respond, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed.
Sure. So on behalf of Turo, and that's a great question, and it's a question actually that highlights the dynamic. Seems to be some background or something. It's a question that highlights the dynamic nature of peer-to-peer car sharing and everything that it offers, right? You've got EVs on one side and you've got classic vehicles on the other side. And in regards to the classic Volkswagen Beetle that you're talking about, anything that is considered a vintage or classic vehicle on the Turo platform does have to go through an extensive checklist, a safety checklist, and the N-coil model as well. That more largely applies to, let's say, the newer vehicles on the Turo platform. There's a year cutoff, and that year cutoff obviously moves 1 year forward every year. I believe it's 15 years, but I can get back to you on the exact date on that. And there's mileage cap as well. So yes, there is extensive checklists and safety protocols for the vehicles on our platform. And look, if there were unsafe vehicles on the platform, this would be a business model that wouldn't live very long, right? This would be a business model that would probably be pretty unsuccessful. We have to have, as a function of the business, that individuals feel safe in our vehicles. And these are cars that are driven personally by other people, in large part, actually, that transport family and loved ones and children. And so to the degree that there are any state mandates, MOTs, any types of emissions or anything else, that's up to the state, and the hosts on our platforms, of course, have to comply with that simply to register his or her vehicle in that state.
I'm going to cut you off there. That's I have several questions, so I need to move along. Senator Berg.
Thank you, sir or Chairman. Again, I'm going to ask the same question I asked the last guy. The 6% that you all are allowed to defer. Mm-hmm. So if you buy a $10,000 car, you're lucky, you find a good $10,000 car, you owe $600. You defer that. And once you pay the state back that $600, does that 6% keep going back to the state, or do you all keep it at that point? What happens to that money?
We keep remitting on every transaction 6%.
So so you could very likely end up paying more than the $600 that you would have owed if you'd done it at the beginning.
Absolutely.
All right. So do you have an average of how much extra you all are paying on those vehicles?
You know, I have not dug into that to give you a ballpark figure, and there would be vehicles where sometimes we would pay more, given a vehicle may get totaled in the second day we own it, you know, or we may have that in our fleet for 3 years. And if it's in our fleet for 3 years, we would have generated substantially more revenue. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I can certainly prepare some information for the committee and get that all over to you after this is over.
I would like to know, is this in the best interest of the rental car companies? Is this in the best interest of the state? Or does it serve everybody equally well? That's what I'd like to know from a financial perspective.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Hebron.
Thank you. Thank you all for testifying today. My question actually goes with Senator Berg's question, is kind of like a follow-up. Have you all at Enterprise ever asked for a refund for overpaying on the You Drive It or usage tax?
I've only been in this market for a year, and I can tell you in that time we have not, to my knowledge, we have not asked for a refund at any point.
I would be interested in hearing if you all ever have in the past, just to kind of get some information, if you could provide that for the committee.
I don't believe we have, but sure.
Thank you.
Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the other questions that were asked sort of covers my thoughts and questions. So I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions we have at this point. We're going to move along to Seth Cutter with the CVG Airport. Seth, please identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Bringing up the rear here, so we'll be short and sweet. Seth Cutter. I am Director of Communications and Government Affairs for the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport, CVG. And we are one of the Commonwealth's 3 commercial service airports, joined by Louisville Muhammad Ali International, SDF, and Lexington's Bluegrass Airport. So on behalf of our 3 CEOs, I want to thank you all for the time today and share with you our joint perspective and position where peer-to-peer car rental companies are concerned, since, as has been noted, many of these types of transactions take place on or at airports. So our airports are seeing firsthand how new technologies impact consumer behavior, and certainly the growth of peer-to-peer car rental companies are no exception. As many of you know, airports in Kentucky operate within the provisions of KRS Chapter 183. Within these statutes, the Commonwealth has given airports the authority and responsibility to regulate commercial activity on airport property. The state has not regulated the way in which our airports structure specific transactions with private operators on our properties. So primarily because our airports and businesses are highly regulated by the federal government, the state has not been involved historically in the specifics of commercial airports business transactions. Our interest is to ensure fairness for all companies and customers transacting business at the airport, because existing state statutes give us that authority to regulate business activity. We are committed to creating a level playing field for all companies seeking access to and offering services at the airport. Further, federal grant assurances require our airports to be as self-sustaining as possible. We work collaboratively and closely with all businesses at our airports. For instance, our airports have worked with car rental companies over many years to plan, finance, and implement capital improvement projects for which, in many cases, debt has been issued. We acknowledge there might be an interest to create minimum standards for peer-to-peer car rental companies to operate at Kentucky's airports, but we do not believe that state statute needs to detail provisions applicable to airports and these companies. While acknowledging that some elements of a peer-to-peer operation are unique, we know that innovation will continue to disrupt business segments, and these peer-to-peer car rental companies, like any other commercial operator, are already required to enter into an agreement with each airport operator. We look forward to working with those peer-to-peer car rental companies, any of them, to negotiate and execute agreements to do so. We know, however, that other state legislation, some that Chairman you referenced before, has outlined where peer-to-peer operations are concerned at airports. So if the General Assembly does pursue legislation and wants to include airport provisions specific to peer-to-peer operations at airports, we urge you to remain broad and high level in any statutory language. 3 general provisions would be sufficient and would stipulate that 1, peer-to-peer car rental companies seeking to operate on an airport must enter into an agreement with each airport operator prior to commencing activity. 2, such agreements would stipulate that there be a financial exchange for the privilege of operating at the airport. We believe peer-to-peer car rental companies should be treated in a manner similar to other like businesses. If airports and peer-to-peer car rental companies desire to designate areas where peer-to-peer transactions take place, standard airport rental and lease rates would apply. And third, finally, in order to protect the traveling public, peer-to-peer car rental companies should meet industry standard requirements for insurance and indemnification coverage. These agreements would also require peer-to-peer car rental companies to regularly provide airport operators with adequate data for audit and compliance purposes, such as vehicle and transaction information. As with other car rental companies, airport operators do not seek unreasonable financial gain. as I said, we are focused on ensuring fair access to airport facilities and recovering adequate revenue to support the upkeep of our facilities at which any new user, including peer-to-peer car rental companies, wish to operate. Therefore, to reiterate, we believe the interests of airports in this issue are already covered by our existing broad authority to regulate commercial activity on property. And I will share with the committee staff a letter from our 3 airport CEOs with the provisions I just outlined, should the committee and legislature wish to include broad airport provisions in the legislation. So, Mr. Chairman and members, thank you for your time and appreciate including airports as part of this conversation.
Sid, thank you for your
Yes, sir.
testimony. Do you currently have any agreements with peer-to-peer?
To my knowledge, our 3 largest airports that I represent do not yet have an agreement, but we are definitely interested in pursuing those. As I mentioned, prior to commencing activity at an airport, any commercial user needs to have an agreement for the privilege of operating on or at the airport.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
John McCarthy has a comment. Are you still with us, John?
I am. Just real quickly, I just wanted to thank the committee, thank the chairman for the opportunity for this debate, public debate. It's the first real opportunity legislators have had to discuss the taxation portion, and we appreciate that. And just remember, every time Enterprise rental does not rent a car and it goes to a shared platform, the state road fund loses money. It loses that 6%. And so just want to close on that comment and thank everybody for their time today.
Thank you, John. This is a very important discussion. Peer-to-peer is it's in its infancy, but as we move forward, there's a lot of predictions that rideshare and a lot of platforms are very futuristic, and so I think it's one of those things we need to address sooner rather than later, especially on the insurance side. We definitely need that legislation passed, and like I said, and to adequately figure out on the taxing issue how we proceed on that. Do we have any additional questions? Senator Berg, you're very questionable today.
I apologize, don't
apologize. We appreciate the questions,
sir. One question: when you say, all of these platforms have to have agreements with the airports to operate, do the Uber and Lyft drivers have those type of agreements with you, or how are they working at this point?
Yes, ma'am. So transportation network companies, we call them TNCs, do have operating agreements at each airport. As I mentioned, for some of these operators, if specific space is given at an airport, such as Uber and Lyft pickups,
right,
that's all been part of the negotiated agreement. Yes, ma'am.
So you're talking about the same type of negotiated agreement for these?
Correct. That's correct. It wouldn't necessarily be all the same provisions, right? Because for many of the reasons we've talked about today, these are unique operations. But yes, and you've seen at airports elsewhere in the country where if there are specific spaces designated for pickups and drop-offs or for the transactions to take place, that's been included in the agreements.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. We're about to wrap this up. Does anyone have any closing statements they want to make? Any of the previous presenters want to have a final word?
Mr. Chairman, this is Chris Nolan again.
Chris, please proceed.
I want to thank you for the time that you've given to this hearing today, and obviously on the taxation issues. We have some differences. We do not think the road fund loses money every time there's a peer-to-peer transaction. We think just the opposite could happen, and we think it's a level taxation playing field today before any legislation would pass. And we are open to some type of taxation on the transaction as long as it applies to all the participants in the car sharing and car rental field. And to the questions of the airports, we've had robust discussions with Seth and some of the other airports, and we appreciate their openness to meet with us, talk with us. We've offered to enter into those contract agreements with the airports here in Kentucky, and think those conversations are well underway, and hopefully those will be inked even before the session comes back. So again, appreciate the time today.
And Mr. Chair, if I may.
You may.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I want to echo, I think, what pretty much everybody has said, and thank you for members' time today. And we do look forward to working on this collaboratively with all stakeholders moving forward. We do view transportation as a growing, let's say, a growing pie. It's not a zero-sum game. For every one transaction that happens at a traditional rental car location, it's not like that's one less transaction that's happening on peer-to-peer or vice versa, right? We don't view this as a zero-sum game. We believe that this is expanding transportation options for people who may previously not have had access to transportation. And so we truly do believe that this is a growing transportation, and that transportation demand is not stagnant. It's not one for one. And that the more robust transportation options out there, the better for the individual men and women in Kentucky. So thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. James Nelson, you're behind the pole. You want to, there you are. Do you have a final statement or parting remarks you'd like to make?
I would just like to, I guess I'll sit back down. I just want to thank you all for having us here, and we also look to get in a room with all the stakeholders and iron out exactly what this legislation looks like going forward. We do want an equitable playing field as well, so we look forward to next session and moving this topic forward. Thanks again.
Thank you all. I do look forward to an agreed upon agreement going into next session where we can pass this out and not let it consume all the oxygen in the room. Next session we got a lot of issues. I know this one was important. We have two administrative regs on the docket, KAR 001-113 and KAR 022-030. One is a driver safety course, moving it from 5 years to 5 years instead of 1 year. And the other one is makes technical changes to and updates materials that are included in KAR 023-030. No comments? I didn't give you a lot of information. Yes.
I notice it's speed title exceptions is what it says. And do you know what those? Does anyone know what those exceptions might be?
We have the person here, Matt. Can you help us with that? That's speed title process exceptions.
I don't want to hold everybody up, but
that's a good question.
I buy a lot of speed titles, so
okay. Well, Matt will enlighten us on that administrative reg.
I brought Godwin with me. He's the director for motor vehicle licensing, and he's certainly the expert on the matter.
Good afternoon again for having us. The speed title exceptions is really for 48-hour requirement by statutes, which is 186 170. And the exception is like when we have extended 3-day weekend, like we just had, and another one is coming in September, first weekend in September. These are the times that we said if you apply for a speed title on Friday, you don't expect to get that speed title within 48 hours because we have holidays. Or if there's some delays from postal services, you don't get that speed title within 48 hours. What happened is we are getting requests for refunds that the individual said they did not receive the certificate of title within 3 days. And when we go back to our records, we realize that maybe it was the holidays or maybe that U.S. Postal Services delayed the delivery of those certificates of titles.
Okay. Well, members of the committee, I appreciate you all sticking it out today. It's a long meeting, but a very productive meeting. Thank you all very much, and have a safe trip